Shut you off. You're breaking quiet hours. I'm calling the cops. 7 a.m. Saturday. I'm just power washing my own driveway when this woman in sky-high heels storms over clipboard, swinging like a weapon, screaming that right in my face. I shut it down. Brookshire. No, I'm not even in your HOA. Her face goes purple with rage. Lies. I'm the president. Rules apply to everyone. Police are coming now. 20 minutes later, cop rolls up, hands me a $200 ticket for disturbing the peace. She stands there gloating, arms crossed, smirking like she just won the neighborhood war. She thought she had total control. She had no idea the tables were about to flip in the most insane way. One simple move I made days earlier would turn her kingdom upside down and leave her begging for mercy. Ever been unfairly targeted by an HOA tyrant like this? Drop your craziest HOA horror story, plus city/state below. Who's ready to see some real karma? 6 months ago, life sucker punched me. Messy divorce. Lost the house. Had to rebuild at 45. I'm Garrett Blackwood, 23 years as a contractor, building everything from kitchen cabinets to whole additions. When the dust settled, I took what was left and bought this little ranch on Elmwood Drive. Nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, built in 1973. But here's the key. I specifically chose this house because it sits on the original 1960 subdivision plat. That means it predates any HOA by 15 years. I did my homework, checked every deed and covenant, made damn sure I was buying freedom, not a subscription to someone else's power trip. The house wire of sawdust and fresh primer when I moved in. Every morning I'd sit on the front steps with coffee in my chipped blue mug, only thing my ex didn't want. Planning renovations and pretending my life wasn't a complete restart at middle age. That's when I met the neighborhood's self-appointed dictator, Delilah Thornfield, 52, HOA. President for 8 consecutive years, drives a white Lexus so spotless it probably gets detailed twice weekly, always carrying this leather-bound violations notebook, like it contains the Constitution instead of complaints about fence heights and garden gnome placement. Her perfume hits you from 20 feet away. Think funeral flowers mixed with industrial chemicals and pure entitlement, but worse than the smell, the sound. Click, click, click of her designer heels on pavement became the neighborhood's tornado siren. Parents would literally call their kids inside when they heard it coming. Day 3 in my new house. Passive-aggressive note tucked under my truck's windshield wiper. Commercial vehicles strictly prohibited per HOA covenant section 4.7b. Remove immediately or face escalating penalties. D. Thornfield. OA President. My work truck. Same Ford I'd driven for a decade. Honest dirt and tool scratches telling the story of every job, every family I'd helped build their dreams. I walked to her magazine Perfect Colonial Lawn, so manicured it looked artificial, and knocked. Mrs. Thornfield got your note about my truck. She opened the door wearing a smile that could freeze hell. I trust you'll comply by 5 p.m. Actually, ma'am, I'm not in your HOA. This house predates all covenants by 15 years. The smile died. Her face went through this fascinating progression. Pink to red to eggplant purple. Impossible. Every property on Elmwood Drive falls under my jurisdiction. Got the original plat maps indeed. If you'd like to review them. Slam. Door hit so hard brass doorbell rattled like a dinner bell. Welcome to Delilah's kingdom. Within days, she escalated. Started parking her Lexus to block my driveway, claiming my truck was an aesthetic emergency for property values. The sharp smell of her exhaust mixing with paint fumes from my bathroom renovation became this toxic reminder that peace was officially over. My neighbor Marcus, retired firefighter, 68 with forearms like tree trunks, pulled me aside after witnessing one blocking incident. "Listen, buddy," he said, voice low like we were planning a prison break. "Delilah's destroyed 3 families this year alone. She runs this place like her personal dictatorship. I've gotten fined $500 for an unauthorized garden gnome. Watch your back." Across the street, Elena Martinez was helping her 2 kids scrub chalk art off the sidewalk. Bright yellow suns and stick figure families disappearing under soapy water because Delilah had declared them unsightly markings on community concrete. $200 fine for children being children. Elena caught me watching and gave this apologetic wave, mouthing sorry like it was her fault some power-hungry lunatic had declared war on childhood itself. The sound of kids' laughter getting quieter each week told me everything about Delilah's reign of terror. But here's what our HOA president didn't know about contractors. We're problem solvers. We look at broken systems and figure out how to fix them. And this neighborhood, this was just my biggest renovation project yet. Week 2 of living in Delilah's crosshairs, and she decided to escalate from petty notes to outright warfare. I'm knee-deep in bathroom renovations, installing subway tile that actually requires skill, unlike whatever contractor botched my ex-wife's kitchen, when there's this official-sounding knock at my door. City inspector got a complaint about unlicensed construction at this address. I wiped tile adhesive off my hands, wondering how installing a bathroom somehow became a federal case. What kind of complaint? Anonymous report claims major electrical and plumbing work without proper permits or licensing. Anonymous. The lie. Lingering smell of funeral perfume in my driveway told me exactly who'd made that call. Here's where the universe decides to throw me a curveball. The inspector badge reads Larry Hoffman takes one look at my spread of permits and contractor's license, then starts cracking up. Garrett Blackwood. No way. I look closer. Holy__Larry Afghanistan. 2007. Same guy who helped me rebuild half of Phoebe Chapman after that mortar attack. 20 years later, he's got gray threading his beard and a city inspector's clipboard, but still the same Larry who could make anything work with duct tape and pure stubbornness. What are the odds you'd be the guy inspecting my bathroom in this town? About 1,000,000 to 1. He surveys my tile work, checks my electrical boxes. So, somebody called the city claiming you're running some kind of unlicensed operation. Yeah, my neighbor thinks I'm single-handedly destroying Western civilization with my power tools. Larry shakes his head, scribbling on his report. Whoever filed this wasted everyone's time. Your work's cleaner than half the licensed guys I inspect daily. After he leaves, I'm sitting there with my coffee getting cold, realizing something important. Back when I bought this house, I'd spent weeks researching property law, making sure I understood exactly what I was buying into. See, most people don't realize that HOA covenants only apply to properties that were specifically included in the original HOA formation documents. My 1973 house was built on the original subdivision plat, 12 years before any HOA existed. The legal principle is simple. You can't retroactively bind someone to a contract they never signed. But Delilah was just getting warmed up. Next morning, I'm headed to grab materials when I spot Mrs. Patterson standing by her mailbox, looking like someone just told her Christmas was canceled. Everything all right, Mrs. Patterson's. On? She hands me an official-looking letter with shaking hands. This HOA lady says, I owe $300 for having an unauthorized memorial garden where Harold's roses are. Harold's roses. The man had planted those for their 50th anniversary, tended them like they were made of gold until the cancer took him last winter. Now his widow was being extorted for keeping his memory alive. When's this due? Friday. 3 days, says if I don't pay, she'll put a lien on my house. 3 days to pay a bogus fine or lose the house she'd shared with Harold for 43 years. The morning air carried the scent of those roses, deep red, fragrant, still blooming despite everything, mixed with Mrs. Rose's deep red, fragrant, still blooming despite everything, mixed with Mrs. Rose's deep red, Patterson's coffee drifting through her kitchen window. That afternoon, I discovered exactly how far Delilah was willing to push this game. I come outside to grab something from my truck and find nothing. Empty driveway. My Ford's gone. There's a citation taped to my front door. Commercial vehicle legally parked in residential zone. Vehicle towed per city ordinance 47.3b. I called the towing company trying to keep my voice level. You towed my truck from my own driveway. Got a call from the HOA president about unauthorized commercial parking. Lady had all the paperwork, seemed legit. The HOA doesn't have authority over my property. Look, buddy, she showed up with official documents, cost you $350 to get it back. $350 plus a half day of paperwork proving the tow was completely illegal. But here's what Delilah didn't understand about guys like me. Every illegal move she made was just building my case. I started documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, copies of every bogus violation. If she wanted to play legal hardball, I'd been studying the rulebook a lot longer than she had. That evening, Marcus stops by with 2 beers and the neighborhood gossip. She hit 3 more families this week, he says, settling into my or chair with a grunt. Elena got another fine for sidewalk chalk. The Johnsons got cited for their flag being 2 and 2 low. She's measuring flag heights now, carries a tape measure everywhere, like some kind of suburban dictator with office supplies. The sound of designer heels clicking on asphalt echoed from down the street. Both Marcus and I went quiet like deer, hearing a hunter's footstep. But hunters get overconfident when they think they're unstoppable, and Delilah was about to learn that some prey fights back. The following Tuesday, Delilah decided to take her personal vendetta public in the most spectacular way possible. I'm replacing rotted deck boards behind my house, the kind of work that actually improves property values instead of destroying them. When Elena comes sprinting across the street like her hair is on fire, "Garrett, emergency HOA meeting tonight. She's making you the main attraction." "What kind of emergency?" Elena catches her breath, glancing around like Delilah might be lurking behind the mailboxes with a tape recorder. "She's telling everyone you're a dangerous neighbor who's threatening property values and neighborhood safety. She wants you banned from all community events." Here's what most people don't know about emergency HOA meetings. They require 72 hours advance notice to all homeowners, proper posting in common areas, and a legitimate emergency. Delilah's hurt feelings don't qualify as a community crisis, but apparently she'd skipped that part of her HOA president handbook. That evening, I showed up at the community center just to watch the circus. Pathetic turnout. Maybe 15 people scattered around a room, designed for 80, looking like they'd rather be getting root canals. Delilah stood at the front wearing a navy blazer that screamed, "I borrowed authority from somewhere." Her leather notebook open like she was prosecuting war crimes. As documented evidence clearly shows, she announces, holding up grainy photos of my truck, "This individual has repeatedly violated noise ordinances, aesthetic standards, and community harmony protocols. Mrs. Juliet, retired high school principal with zero patience for, Sid __ raises her hand. "Excuse me, but didn't this gentleman inform you he's not subject to HOA authority?" Delilah's face cycles through her greatest hits, pink-red approaching eggplant. Property exemption claims are legal fiction perpetuated by troublemakers who refuse to respect community standards. Mini twist. That's when I realized she actually believed her own propaganda. In Delilah's universe, she really was the supreme ruler of Elmwood Drive, and everyone else were just peasants who hadn't learned proper genuflection yet. After her 20-minute PowerPoint presentation about my alleged crimes against suburbia, seriously, she had slides. Mrs. Juliet stands up, motion to table this discussion until proper legal review can be conducted. Seconded. Calls out Mr. Patterson's son who'd driven down from Cleveland specifically to witness this train wreck. Delilah pounds her gavel like she's conducting an orchestra. Motion denied. This is an emergency session with suspended procedural requirements. That's not how emergency meetings work. But watching 15 neighbors exchange uncomfortable glances told me nobody else knew the rules either. After the meeting, and I use that term generously since it violated roughly 6 different legal requirements, Marcus and Elena intercepted me in the parking lot. "She's completely lost her mind," Elena whispers, checking over her shoulder. "Yesterday, she fined my 8-year-old son for bouncing a basketball. Said repetitive sounds after 400 p.m. constitute noise harassment. Marcus looks like he's been chewing nails. $500 fine for my garden gnome. Apparently, ceramic lawn ornaments. Violate newly established aesthetic dignity standards." What aesthetic dignity standards? The ones she invented Tuesday afternoon. But the real revelation came from Mr. Patterson's son, David, still processing what he'd witnessed. She threatened to foreclose on my 86-year-old mother over roses my father planted for their anniversary. Said if Mom doesn't pay $300 by Friday, she'll put a lien on the house. The evening air carried the familiar scent of Harold's roses mixed with the distant sound of the Garcia twins playing in their backyard. Normal neighborhood sounds that Delilah was systematically trying to criminalize. That night, fueled by insomnia and righteous indignation, I dove into the digital rabbit hole of property records and corporate filings. What I discovered made everything click into horrifying focus. 8 houses on our street had changed ownership in the past 2 years. All forced sales due to unpaid HOA assessments, all purchased by the same buyer, Thornfield Holdings LLC. I cross-referenced the sale dates with Delilah's violation records. Every family had been systematically targeted with escalating fines, garden violations, noise complaints, children existing in public until they couldn't afford to fight anymore. The Hendersons, $2,400 in accumulated fines for excessive lawn ornaments. A bird bath and garden flag, sold last spring. The Kowalskis, $3,100 for unauthorized pet activities. Their dog barking during thunderstorms. Gone by summer. The Washingtons, $1,800 for cultural display violations. Wind chimes and a small garden statue, moved in August. Pattern recognition kicked in like a physical punch. This wasn't random HOA tyranny. This was systematic theft using fake authority to steal people's homes. I started documenting everything, but now with a specific target. If Delilah wanted to play legal games, she'd just handed me the rule K to beat her with, and tomorrow I'd start building an army. Thursday morning brought Delilah's declaration of total war against my right to exist on planet Earth. I'm barely through my first sip of coffee when my doorbell erupts like a fire alarm. City code enforcement looking about as thrilled to be there as I was to see them. Sir, we've received 7 separate complaints this week about construction violations, noise ordinances, and potential zoning infractions at this address. 7 complaints in 5 days. Delilah had apparently made harassing city departments her new career. The inspector, Rodriguez, according to his badge, trudges through my house with the enthusiasm of someone auditing a morgue. After 20 minutes of checking every outlet, measuring every board, and testing every fixture, he makes his call. Ma'am, I've completed a thorough inspection. There are no violations. The work is properly permitted. Noise levels are regulation compliant, and honestly, this house is in better condition than most properties I inspect. Through his phone, I can hear Delilah's voice reaching frequencies that probably violate noise ordinances themselves. Rodriguez pulls the phone away from his ear, grimaces, like he just tasted sour milk. Ma'am, filing false reports is a Class B misdemeanor. Continued frivolous complaints will result in charges being filed against you personally. 5 minutes after Rodriguez drives away, Marcus appears at my back gate like some kind of suburban ninja. Emergency neighborhood meeting, he whispers, checking over his shoulder. Elena's house now, and bring whatever evidence you've got. Just got real. Elena's kitchen smells like vanilla candles in desperation. 6 neighbors crowded around her breakfast table looking like refugees planning an escape route. Mrs. Juliet, the retired principal, speaks first. Delilah hit me with $1,500 yesterday for unauthorized cultural displays. Apparently, my grandmother's Buddha statue violates newly invented religious neutrality standards. She threatened to call CPS on my kids. Elena adds, her voice barely steady. Said children playing outside without adequate supervision constitutes neglect over sidewalk chalk. Mr. Garcia bounces his toddler nervously. 300 more for visible toys in our front yard. She measured the distance from our slide to the property line with an actual tape measure. But here's where things got really ugly. Mrs. got really ugly. Mrs. got really ugly. Patterson's son, David, clears his throat. Mom got another notice about Dad's roses. This time, Delilah claims they're attracting bees, which she's now calling a public safety hazard requiring immediate remediation. The systematic escalation clicked into place, like puzzle pieces. Delilah wasn't just power drunk, she was racing against something. That evening, fueled by rage and contractor-grade stubbornness, I dove back into public records with laser focus. What I found made my blood turn to ice water. Thornfield Holdings LLC had purchased 8 properties on our street in 2 years. But here's the kicker. Every house was now a rental property commanding 40% above market rates. The Mitchell house that sold for $175,000 after emergency foreclosure was now renting for $2,300 monthly. I cross-referenced the LLC registration with county business filings. Registered agent Delilah M. Thornfield. Holy __. She wasn't just the HOA president terrorizing homeowners. She was the buyer profiting from every forced sale. The whole operation was her personal real estate acquisition scheme, using fake authority to steal houses and flip them for rental income. But the really ugly part, I found mortgage records showing Thornfield Holdings was leveraged to the hilt. The company had loans against all 8 properties with balloon payments coming due in 6 months. She needed more acquisitions to service the debt, which explained the sudden escalation in her attacks. Friday evening, Elena shows up at my door with mascara streaked down her cheeks and a manila envelope trembling in her hands. "I can't fight anymore," she whispers, glancing around like Delilah might be hiding in the bushes with surveillance equipment. Inside the envelope, an emergency special assessment notice demanding $3,000 in 10 days for accumulated violations and mandatory neighborhood improvements. "Elena, this is completely illegal." "She can't. I don't have $3,000. I barely have 300 in savings." Her voice cracks. And here's the really sick part. She told me, if I can't pay, she personally knows someone who'd be interested in purchasing my property for fair market value to help me avoid foreclosure. The scent of Elena's vanilla candles mixed with the distant sound of her kids' laughter from inside. Normal family life being systematically destroyed by one woman's greed. That's when it all crystallized. Delilah wasn't just running a scam. She was in a desperate race to acquire enough properties before her financing collapsed. But she'd made one fatal mistake. She'd targeted a contractor who'd spent 23 years solving problems that seemed impossible. And I'd just figured out how to solve her. That weekend, surrounded by enough legal documents to choke a horse in coffee strong enough to wake the dead, I made the discovery that would turn Delilah's little kingdom into my personal chess game. 2 a.m. kitchen table covered in property records, like I'm planning a military invasion. My eyes feel like sandpaper, but something keeps gnawing at me about those 8 forced sales. I pull up the original 1960 subdivision plat, same documents that proved my house predated Delilah's authority, when I spot something I'd completely missed before. Buried in the deed restrictions, there's a clause, W, written in that old-fashioned legal language, right of first refusal for any bulk property sales exceeding 33 residential units within a 12-month period to be offered to original plat property holders at fair market appraisal. I read it again slower this time. Then I start laughing, actually laughing, sitting alone in my kitchen at 2 in the morning because the universe just handed me the biggest middle finger to give Delilah Thornfield. The original subdivision included a protection clause. If anyone tried to buy multiple houses for speculation, the remaining original homeowners could purchase those properties first at current appraised value, not fire sale prices. Delilah's company had triggered that exact clause by stealing 8 houses. And guess who holds an original plat deed? The contractor she'd been terrorizing for months. I spend the rest of the night researching bulk property sale laws, the taste of victory mixing with my 4th cup of coffee. Turns out acquiring more than 3 residential properties in one subdivision within 12 months triggers federal disclosure requirements, community notification requirements, fair market appraisal requirements, none of which Thornfield Holdings had followed. Sunday morning, I called Jake, my real estate lawyer buddy who owes me for rebuilding his deck. Jake, hypothetically, if someone triggered right of first refusal, but never properly disclosed bulk acquisition, hypothetically, every sale gets voided. Properties must be offered to qualified buyers at fair appraisal before any bulk purchase proceeds. Why? And if the bulk buyer was also the HOA president who created the violations forcing the sales, long silence. Jesus, Garrett, that's fraud, conspiracy, probably RICO. We're talking federal prison time. The sweet smell of revenge never smelled so good. Monday, I drive to the county assessor, requesting formal appraisals on all 8 Thornfield properties. As original plat holder with right of first refusal, I'm legally entitled to purchase them at current market value. The numbers make me dizzy with possibility. $1.4 million total appraised value. Delilah paid $980,000 through forced sales. But here's where her greed becomes her downfall. I find her loan documents. Thornfield Holdings owes $1.20, $2 million across all properties with balloon payments due in 4 months. She's been using rental income to service debt, desperately needing more acquisitions to stay solvent, hence the recent escalation in her reign of terror. Tuesday evening, Elena appears at my door, looking like she's aged 5 years in 2 weeks. She's going for the kill, Elena says, slumping into my kitchen chair. Emergency assessments for 3 more families today, $2,000 to $4,000 each. Payment due in 1 week. Let me guess, she personally offered to help them find buyers. How did you know? I spread the plat maps across my table, feeling like a general revealing battle plans. Because she's desperate, her financing's collapsing, and she needs those houses fast. Elena stares at the documents. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to explain to Delilah Thornfield what happens when you pick a fight with someone who actually knows the rules. For the first time in weeks, Elena grins. Please tell me you have a plan that involves watching her face when she realizes she's screwed. Better than that, I have a plan that makes me her landlord. Wednesday morning, I called a war council that would make the founding fathers proud. My kitchen table became mission control. Coffee brewing, documents spread like battle plans, and the kind of determined energy that builds actual revolutions. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with Marcus's Old Spice and Elena's vanilla perfume, creating this oddly comforting scent of suburban rebellion. Marcus arrived, first, carrying his firefighter toolkit, like we were planning to rebuild civilization. Elena showed up with legal pads and the steely expression of someone who'd watched her kids stop laughing. Mrs. Juliet brought homemade snickerdoodles and 4 decades of experience destroying administrative tyranny. All right, people, I said, channeling every construction foreman I'd ever worked under. Here's how we're going to turn Delilah Thornfield's world upside down. The plan had 3 phases, each more satisfying than the last. Phase 1, I invoke my right of first refusal on all 8 stolen properties. This forces Delilah to either sell them to me at fair market value or prove her acquisitions were legal, which they weren't. Phase 2, we document every procedural violation she's committed as HOA president, building a case that would make federal prosecutors drool. Phase 3, we trigger an emergency homeowners meeting and expose everything publicly with media present and enough evidence to end her criminal enterprise permanently. But we need video proof, Mrs. says. Juliet says, her principal instincts laser-focused. If we're accusing her of systematic fraud, we better have documentation that could survive Supreme Court scrutiny. That's where Marcus's firefighter training became our secret weapon. 25 years of incident reports had taught him how to build cases that prosecutors dream about. State sunshine laws are beautiful things, he explains, cracking his knuckles like a pianist preparing for Carnegie Hall. HOA meetings must provide 72 hours advance notice, open records access, and majority homeowner votes for financial decisions. She's violated every single requirement. I'd already researched the legal trap we were setting. When HOA boards operate outside state corporate law, every decision they make becomes legally invalid. That means every fine, every violation, every fine, every violation, every forced sale could be overturned. Here's the beautiful part. I continue, feeling like a chess master explaining checkmate. I'm requesting an emergency meeting to discuss my right of first refusal claim. She has to respond within 5 business days and schedule within 10 days. State law. What if she refuses? Elena asks, unconsciously, clutching her coffee mug like a weapon. Then she's violated state corporate law, and we file complaints with the Attorney General. But she won't refuse. Her ego won't let her. The recording strategy required some creative problem solving. We needed everything documented, but obvious cameras would put her on guard. Mrs. Juliet solved that with the devious intelligence of someone who'd managed teenagers for 40 years. My grandson gave me this pen camera for Christmas. Records 4K video and crystal clear audio. Delilah will never suspect a thing. I'll run audio backup on my phone, Elena adds. Plus, I've been practicing shorthand since this nightmare started. Every word will be documented. But evidence collection was just the beginning. We needed leverage, and that's where my contractor network became invaluable. 23 years building houses creates relationships with inspectors, assessors, real estate agents, people who know where every skeleton is buried. I started making calls, asking favors, calling in markers from guys who owed me for emergency repairs and weekend heroics. By Thursday, I had testimony from 3 displaced families willing to go on record about Delilah's intimidation tactics. More importantly, I had financial records proving Thornfield Holdings was over-leveraged and desperately needing more acquisitions to avoid bankruptcy. Friday evening, we rehearsed the operation in my living room like we were planning to infiltrate Fort Knox. When she tries to shut down discussion, I tell Elena, You stand and demand a formal vote. State law requires majority approval to table any agenda item. And when she claims executive session privilege, Marcus adds, grinning like someone anticipating Christmas morning, I'll remind everyone that HOA boards are private corporations, not government agencies. They have no executive privilege. Mrs. Juliet practices with her spy pen, getting comfortable with the recording mechanism. 40 years of catching lying teenagers taught me one thing: evidence beats everything. The irony was delicious. Delilah had spent months using fake authority to terrorize families. Now we were using real legal authority to expose her systematic fraud. Saturday morning, I drafted the formal meeting request, carefully wording it to trigger every legal requirement she'd been ignoring. Walking to her house at exactly 9 a.m., I could smell victory in the morning air. Or maybe that was just the scent of Mrs. Patterson's roses still blooming despite everything Delilah had tried to destroy. She answered the door in her bathrobe hair, looking like she'd been electrocuted, clutching coffee like a life preserver. "What is this?" she snapped, scanning my letter with growing horror. "Democracy in action. You have 5 business days to respond, 10 to schedule. State law." Her face cycled through the rainbow of rage. "This is harassment. No, this is justice. Might want to Google the difference." Her door slam rattled windows 3 houses down. The countdown had officially begun. Monday morning brought Delilah's response to my meeting request, delivered via certified mail like a declaration of war. Instead of the simple acknowledgement required by state law, she'd written a 3-page manifesto that read like the diary of someone slowly losing their grip on reality. She denied my spurious legal claims, questioned my mental competency, and declared that disruptive elements will not be permitted to undermine community ability through frivolous legal harassment. She'd also scheduled the meeting for Saturday at 6 p.m., 2 days short of the legally required 10-day notice. Either panic was making her sloppy, or she genuinely believed laws were suggestions that didn't apply to her personal kingdom. But Tuesday morning revealed exactly how desperate Delilah had become. I wake up to Marcus standing in my backyard, staring at something with the expression of someone who'd just discovered a crime scene. "You're not going to believe this. My security cameras, the ones I'd installed to document her parking violations, had been spray-painted black during the night, not just covered, but methodically vandalized with what looked like automotive paint applied with a kind of precision that suggested premeditation. This is felony destruction of property," Marcus says, examining the thick paint coating. She's gone from petty tyrant to actual criminal. The taste of morning coffee suddenly turned bitter as the implications hit me. Delilah wasn't just escalating, she was panicking. Wednesday brought proof that her desperation was reaching psychotic levels. Elena appears at my door at 7 a.m. clutching another certified letter and looking like she hadn't slept in weeks. Emergency special assessment, $5,000, due Thursday. $5,000 for a single mom whose biggest splurge was taking her kids to McDonald's on payday. What's the alleged violation this time? Ongoing disruption of community noise standards and failure to maintain appropriate household supervision protocols. Elena's hands shake as she reads. She's claiming my children playing outside after school constitutes a persistent public nuisance requiring immediate professional remediation. The systematic acceleration was becoming crystal clear. Delilah knew Saturday's meeting would expose her operation, so she was trying to force out as many families as possible before her house of cards collapsed. Thursday brought the most vicious attacks yet. Mrs. Juliet got slammed with $2,000 for unauthorized cultural displays, the same Buddha statue that had sat peacefully in her garden for 15 years. The Garces received $3,500 for excessive family activities, because their 3-year-old twins played on a swing set in their own backyard. But the attack that made my blood boil was saved for Mrs. Patterson. I find the 86-year-old widow sitting on her front steps Thursday afternoon, tears streaming down her face as she clutches another certified letter. "Harold's roses," she whispers. She wants me to remove Harold's roses by Saturday, or she'll have them professionally removed and bill me for the service. The roses Harold had planted for their 50th wedding anniversary. Flowers that had bloomed faithfully every spring for a decade. The only thing that still made Mrs. Patterson smile since losing her husband. The scent of those roses deep crimson, heavy with the perfume of 5 decades of love, mixed with the sound of Mrs. Patterson's quiet crying, creating this heartbreaking reminder of what we were really fighting for. Silent preparation intensifies. While Delilah terrorized elderly widows, I was methodically building the case that would destroy her. I'd spent every evening this week documenting violations, cross-referencing her procedural failures with state corporate law, building an evidence file that would make federal prosecutors weep with joy. More importantly, I'd been working my contractor network like a spider spinning a web. 23 years in construction means you know people. City inspectors, real estate agents, mortgage brokers, people who owe favors and remember when you saved their asses on weekend emergencies. By Thursday, I had copies of every loan document, every property transfer, every rental agreement tied to Thornfield Holdings. I had testimony from displaced families willing to go on record. I had financial records proving her company was weeks away from defaulting on over-leveraged properties. Friday morning, I filed the formal right of first refusal paperwork with the county clerk, triggering automatic appraisals and legal review of all 8 stolen properties. But the real bombshell came Friday evening. Elena stops by looking like she'd seen a ghost. She's going door to door personally now. Visited 3 families today, offering to help them avoid the stress of fighting illegal assessments by connecting them with interested buyers who could close quickly. Let me guess, Thornfield Holdings is very interested. She told Mrs. Garcia that legal battles are expensive and emotionally draining, but a fast sale could solve all their problems immediately. The predatory desperation was reaching peak insanity. Delilah was literally hunting door to door, trying to pressure terrified families into selling before Saturday exposed her systematic fraud. But every desperate move was just giving me more ammunition. The smell of victory was almost as intoxicating as my evening coffee. 18 hours until justice. Saturday morning brought Delilah's final desperate gambit, and the moment I realized she'd completely lost touch with reality. I'm reviewing my evidence files one last time when Marcus comes pounding on my door at 8 a.m., still in his pajamas and looking like he'd seen a ghost. "She's lost her goddamn mind," he says, catching his breath. "Look at this." He hands me a printed email that had gone out to every address on Elmwood Drive at 6 a.m. The subject line read, "Emergency Security Alert. Dangerous individual identified." The email claimed I was a mentally unstable individual with a history of aggressive behavior who posed a clear and present danger to community safety. She'd somehow photoshopped me. She'd contractor's license photo next to what looked like a mugshot, warning residents to avoid all contact and report any suspicious activity immediately to authorities. She sent this to 47 households, Marcus says, his firefighter training keeping him calm despite obvious fury, including the police department, city council, and local news outlets. But Delilah's smear campaign backfired spectacularly in the most beautiful way possible. By 10 a.m., my phone was ringing off the hook, not with concerned neighbors, with reporters. "Mr. Blackwood, this is Sarah Martinez from Channel 7 Investigative Unit. We received some interesting emails this morning about an HOA dispute, but they seem to contradict our research into systematic HOA fraud in your neighborhood. Would you be available for an interview?" Holy, Delilah's attempt to destroy my reputation had just attracted the exact media attention that would destroy hers. "Actually, we're having an emergency HOA meeting tonight at 6 p.m. Community Center. You might want to bring cameras." By noon, Delilah was in full panic mode. Elena calls me, whispering like she's hiding from surveillance. She's trying to cancel the meeting. Claims she received credible security threats that make it unsafe to proceed. She can't cancel a properly noticed meeting without board approval. She's also hired private security. 2 guys in suits are parked outside the community center, telling people the meeting is postponed indefinitely. The illegal intimidation was reaching federal crime levels. But it also meant Delilah was completely desperate. When cornered animals get this frantic, they make catastrophic mistakes. I spent Saturday afternoon coordinating with my team like we were planning the Normandy invasion. Mrs. Juliet would arrive early with her spy pen, documenting everything from the moment doors opened. Marcus would handle crowd control and witness coordination. Elena would manage audio recording and real-time documentation of procedural violations. But I had one final surprise that would make this entire operation legendary. Remember those property appraisals I triggered with my right of first refusal filing? They came back Friday afternoon and the numbers were devastating for Delilah's empire. Current market value of the 8 stolen properties, $1.47 million. Outstanding debt on Thornfield Holdings, $1.23 million purchase price. Delilah paid through 4 sales, $987,000. She owed more than the properties were worth when she bought them, and with rental markets softening, her monthly income couldn't service the debt. She was literally weeks away from bankruptcy, which explained the accelerating desperation to force more sales. But here's the beautiful part. My right of first refusal meant she had to offer me those properties at current appraised value, not the inflated rental income prices she needed to stay solvent. If I exercised my legal right, I could force her to sell properties for $1.47 million, while she still owed $1.23 million, leaving her with barely enough to avoid personal bankruptcy. 5 p.m. Final preparations complete. Mrs. Juliet's pen camera tested and ready. Elena's phone set to record mode. Marcus carrying printed copies of every legal violation we documented. And me, I'm carrying the one document that would end Delilah Thornfield's criminal empire forever. 5:30 p.m. we arrive at the community center to find chaos. Delilah's security guards are indeed trying to turn people away, claiming the meeting has been postponed for safety reasons. But 40-plus neighbors are gathered in the parking lot, many carrying their own documentation of violations and bogus fines. More importantly, Channel 7's news van is parked prominently in front with reporter Sarah Martinez, setting up for what she clearly expects to be a major story. 5:45 p.m. Delilah arrives in her white Lexus, takes one look at the crowd and media presence, and her face cycles through emotions like a broken traffic light: fear, rage, desperation, then something that looked disturbingly like detached determination, the smell of approaching thunderstorms mixed with hot asphalt, and the collective anxiety of 40 people who'd been terrorized for years, all gathering to watch their neighborhood dictator face justice. As we walk toward the community center doors, Elena grabs my arm. What if this doesn't work? What if she somehow weasels out of everything? I smile, patting the folder containing Delilah's financial death warrant. Then she's better at magic than mathematics. The community center had never seen anything like what happened next. 47 residents packed into a room designed for 30, with Channel 7's camera crew positioned for maximum coverage, and Delilah standing at the front podium, like Napoleon facing Waterloo. She dressed for battle, navy blazer, American flag pin, leather notebook clutched like a shield, but her hands were shaking as she banged the gavel with the desperation of someone calling for order in the middle of a hurricane. This emergency session is called to address false and defamatory claims made by a disruptive individual, she announces, voice pitched higher than usual. However, due to safety concerns, I'm limiting discussion to essential business only. That's when Mrs. Juliet stands up, her spy pen recording everything, and delivers the first blow. Point of order. State sunshine laws require all agenda items to be addressed. You cannot selectively limit discussion in an open meeting. Delilah's face goes through that familiar color progression, pink to red to approaching eggplant. This individual has no standing to actually. Marcus interrupts, rising like a mountain from his folding chair. Every homeowner has legal standing in HOA meetings. That's state corporate law. The crowd starts murmuring as people realize this isn't going to be another one of Delilah's scripted performances. I stand up, fold her in hand, and deliver the opening that changes everything. Mrs. Thornfield, before we discuss safety concerns, I'd like to address my formal right of first refusal claim filed with the county regarding 8 properties illegally acquired by Thornfield Holdings LLC. The room goes dead, silent. Delilah's face drains of color so fast I thought she might faint. That's not on the agenda, she stammers. Emergency meetings allow any homeowner to raise issues affecting property values, Elena says, reading from her phone. It's in your own bylaws, Section 4.7. I walk to the front of the room feeling 47 pairs of eyes and one news camera tracking my movement. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 8 months, you've been terrorized by someone operating completely outside the law. Every fine issued, every violation notice, every threat of foreclosure, all of it was illegal. I open my folder and pull out the first bombshell. Delilah Thornfield has been running a real estate acquisition scheme using fake HOA authority. 8 families have been forced from their homes through fraudulent violations with all properties purchased by her company, Thornfield Holdings. Gasps echo through the room. Mrs. Patterson starts crying. The Garcia family looks stunned. Marcus helps me project bank records on the community center's ancient overhead screen. Here's how the scam worked. Create bogus violations with escalating fines. When families can't pay, threaten foreclosure. Force them to sell cheap. Buy through the shell company. Rent at 40% above market rates. The numbers don't lie. $987,000 in forced purchases, now worth $1.47 million, generating $23,000 monthly rental income. Delilah tries desperately to regain control. This is defamation. Security. Remove this individual immediately. But her security guards had mysteriously vanished when the news cameras arrived. Mrs. Juliet stands up, her teacher authority cutting through the chaos. Motion to remove Delilah Thornfield as HOA president for systematic fraud and violation of fiduciary duties. Seconded, calls Mr. Garcia. Thirded, shouts, Mrs. Patterson surprising everyone. That's when I deliver the knockout punch. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter what this meeting decides. Mrs. Thornfield's company is in default on $1.23 million in property loans with balloon payments due in 6 weeks. I pull out the loan documents, holding them up for the camera. But here's the beautiful part. My right of first refusal as an original plat holder means she has to offer me those 8 properties at current appraised value, $1.47 million, regardless of her financial situation. The room is dead silent as the mathematics sink in. Congratulations, Delilah. You just became my tenant. Her clipboard crashes to the floor. The leather notebook falls open, revealing pages of violation notices pre-written for families she planned to target next. That's when Officer Rodriguez, the same cop who'd cited me for power washing, walks through the door, but not alone. 2 detectives in suits follow him along with someone wearing an FBI windbreaker. Delilah Thornfield, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and violation of federal RICO statutes. As handcuffs click around Delilah's wrists, 47 neighbors burst into spontaneous applause. Mrs. Patterson stands up clapping with tears streaming down her face. The Garcia twins start cheering like their team just won the World Series. Sarah Martinez from Channel 7 captures every moment as Delilah is led away. Her American flag pin, catching the fluorescent lights one last time. He woman, who terrorized an entire neighborhood with fake authority, was leaving in real handcuffs. Justice had never looked so beautiful. 3 months later, Elmwood Drive had transformed from a neighborhood under siege into something that actually felt like a community. The legal aftermath moved faster than anyone expected. State Attorney General's office launched a full investigation into HOA fraud that eventually expanded to 17 neighborhoods across 3 counties. Delilah pleaded guilty to conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering charges, receiving 4 years in federal prison, plus full restitution orders. But the real satisfaction came from the financial justice. I exercised my right of first refusal on all 8 stolen properties, purchasing them for exactly $1.47 million, the current appraised value. After Thornfield Holdings paid off their $1.23 to $3 million in debt, Delilah was left with barely enough to avoid personal bankruptcy. The beautiful part, I immediately offered rent to own contracts to the displaced families at monthly payments lower than their previous mortgage costs. The Hendersons moved back into their house by Christmas. The Kowalowskis returned in January. The Washingtons came home in February, their wind chimes singing in the breeze again. Elena's kids are playing basketball in their driveway again, the sound of bouncing balls and laughter replacing the click of designer heels on pavement. Mrs. Patterson's roses are blooming magnificently this spring, and she started a neighborhood gardening club that meets every Saturday. Marcus Garden Gnome not only returned to its place of honor, but was joined by 6 others donated by neighbors who figured if you're going to violate aesthetic dignity standards, you might as well do it with style. For me, this whole nightmare turned into the best thing that happened after my divorce. Fighting Delilah's tyranny gave me purpose. But building this community gave me something I'd lost: hope. I kept my house, obviously, but bought the vacant lot next door and turned it into a community workshop where neighbors can borrow tools, learn basic home repair, and help each other with projects. The smell of sawdust and the sound of laughter have replaced the toxic atmosphere of fear that once defined our street. The recovered funds, $400,000 in illegal fines, plus penalties, created something special. Working with Elena, who turned out to have serious organizational skills, we established the Harold Patterson Memorial Scholarship for local kids pursuing trade school education. Mrs. Coordinate Out Patterson suggested the name, saying Harold would have loved helping young people learn honest work. The first 3 recipients are starting programs in electrical, plumbing, and carpentry this fall. Last month, we held our first annual Elmwood Drive Block Party, a real celebration voted on democratically, not some dictatorial decree about community harmony. Mrs. Juliet organized games for kids. Marcus handled the grilling. His ribs are legendary. And Elena coordinated a potluck that brought dishes from 7 different cultures. The smell of barbecue smoke mixed with Mrs. Garcia's tamales and Mrs. Garcia's tamales and Mrs. Juliet's dumplings, creating this amazing aromatic reminder of what neighborhoods can be when fear is replaced with friendship. We established a legitimate HOA with proper incorporation, elected board positions, and bylaws that actually follow state law. I got elected president unanimously. Apparently saving everyone's homes from a criminal enterprise builds name recognition. Our first official act was creating a Bill of Rights for homeowners, guaranteeing due process, appeal rights, and protection from retaliatory enforcement. Our second was commissioning a memorial plaque for the community center, Delilah Thornfield Memorial Hall for Open Government, a reminder that democracy requires vigilance. This experience taught me that sometimes life's worst moments lead to its most meaningful chapters. I'm dating again. Sarah from Channel 7, actually, whose investigative piece on HOA fraud won a regional Emmy, who knew saving a neighborhood would improve my love life. But this wasn't my last encounter with petty tyrants drunk on imaginary power. Wait until I tell you about the city inspector who thought he could shut down my community workshop with made-up zoning violations. That story involves a drone, a federal database, and the most satisfying phone call to a corrupt official's boss that I've ever witnessed. You know what gets me about Garrett's story? It wasn't the 1.47 million watching Deli in handcuff. It was Mr. Patterson clapping through her tears, 86 years old, applauding because someone finally protected her husband, loses from a woman with a fake badge and a major ring tape. Did they rent that scam for years? It family destroyed $400,000 in bulk price. Or because something most importers don't read, the 5 green that write the first review clause, said there since 1960, waiting for someone smart enough to use it. But here's what really pissed me off. This wasn't some isolated job. FBI found 17 other neighborhoods running the same car. 17 makes you wonder what bury in your HOA document, doesn't it? When's the last time you actually read those bylaws? Because I guarantee there's stuff in there that either save your ass or screw you over. Maybe both. Look, most of us just want to wash our driveways and leave in peace, but there's always someone like Dia who mistakes a clear boss or a crowd, and they count on you being too tired, too busy, or too intimated to fight back. Kay wasn't the smarter anyone else. He just got mad enough to do his homework. If you're dealing with your own tyrant, drop your comment below. Some of you are fighting battles that make this look like practice browse. Hit subscribe if you want to see more pretty dictators get their reality check, because in America, there's never a sage of people who think authority comes from a letter book, sometimes knowing the rule bus play.